Well, hello all. Back after a couple of weeks to Scotch on the Balcony, myself and Al. Hi, Al. How are things?
Hey guys, not too bad at all, man. It's the weekend, so I can't complain.
Yeah, sorry we haven't been here. It's been a tough couple of weeks for me, so sorry about that. But we're back
And
now.
me as well. It's middle-aged men issues, but we won't get into that in case we have a younger demographic.
Yeah, we're old. You know, to our probably two listeners down, we're probably down to. Now, today's episode, Truth Be Told, came out in 2004. I hope it makes you all feel old. It makes me feel old. And today's episode, as I have mentioned about Monica Potter, I also Dana Delaney from China Beach. Did you watch China Beach, Al?
Man, if anyone hasn't watched China Beach, and it's nearly 30 years since it finished.
Yeah.
I remember watching it as a kid. My older sisters loved it. It really is a great TV show. Amazing. But yeah, that's what I remember her from as well.
Yeah, no, I had a crush on her. But
it was Vietnam, right?
Yeah.
It was the Vietnam War.
Vietnam War.
It was where all the great music, Vietnam War, but it an amazing, and you'll recognize a lot of people who went on to do very well for themselves. But it's a good, if you're not hooked by the first episode or two, it's not for you, but it's a great show.
I need to go back and see whether it is that good or whether it's just nice thoughts of the past that we all have.
So I did watch 2 episodes of it just over the summer. I blame COVID, and it's really good. It's not the kind of thing, Harry, where like a Breaking Bad kind of. It is more straightforward, but it's a very, very good show with good characters. And I feel like I'm earning commission for a show that was made in 88 or 89.
Okay, so today's episode, Truth Be Told. So just a quick summary of it. As per IMDb, Alan represents the husband who was running for mayor of his old crush, Samantha. That's played by Dana Delaney, when a false rumor is publicized. Denny awaits the results of the test, which will reveal whether he has Alzheimer's or not, while Laurie helps a lawyer convincing his wife to give him his son's frozen umbilical cord, which would save his life. Meanwhile, Denny takes Sally's client who is suing a toaster company for his faulty product. Now, if you think that's all the show is about, obviously, then you know nothing about Boston Legal. So, let's jump into the first one. And I like this episode because, funnily enough, it's one of these episodes we don't actually learn anything more about the characters we love. It just throws up a few more questions, obviously, as it does. Now, there's a little bit about Denny starting his journey with Alzheimer's, but apart from that, we don't learn anything else that we didn't already know about the characters in Boston Legal. So this first case with Alan and his old crush Samantha. So there's a video put out which is not necessarily the truth, and it would appear, and this was in 2004. So we know it's to the power of nearly infinity these days that you're allowed to just say anything. And when questioned about it, their side's reply was, well, you can put your own ad out. And I think that's kind of what we have now. It's in politics and in life. I think the questions that's being asked here is where does the truth where does the truth belong in life? And there was a funny comment made when Alan was saying that telling the husband that he had a crush on her, where he said, well, I mixed up the truth with total disclosure, I think was the words he used, which is a very, which I think this is what the case is asking us.
Yeah.
What information should we be looking for? What's the truth? What do you disclose? Because the truth about the ad, well, that's bullshit. That's just out and out lie. That had nothing to do with him. However, there's this other truth that he's having an affair with one of his staff. So
I think from a comedic standpoint, where he lets the staffer know that he knows she's having the affair with the guy who I think he's going for mayor. I just think it's a brilliant moment in the episode. But one of the things that struck me when I watched it again, and without getting into the other storylines, but I have to kind of get into the other storylines to say this. Really, I think that episode for me is about the malleable thing of truth. and ethics.
Yes.
And what you stand for and what you don't. And what you see at points in the episode is, well, we know politicians lie. And we know they lie, certainly in America, on campaign ads, because they know they're not going to get sued. It's a campaign ad, and you can kind of say what you want to within certain. And the other, when you look at the toaster one, with the guy who stuck the fork in the toaster and he wants to get money from them, and his own counsel from that firm, Boston legal firm, are saying, don't, you tell the truth, but you don't say too much. And then you have the situation of, the situation with the mayor and what's acceptable truth and what's not. And I think it's quite interesting because at one point, and forgive me, Hannah, I always manage to forget her name, but where she's being told you either tell the truth, Laurie Colson, right? Where she's being told, like, if you don't, it's an ethical issue if you don't tell the truth for the case that she's dealing with. And actually, well, probably it seems like in the end she takes the right moral decision. So sometimes it's okay to tell those lies, and sometimes it's not. And I think that episode early on for Boston Legal shows up those different kind of positions where, it just really depends on what your view is, on who, for example, with the Denny Crane hasn't brought money into the firm in a few years, and it's, it's not about the mayor that's currently incumbent brings a lot of money to us. The mayor that wants to, who's the kind of A-line story in the show, who wants to be mayor, he's not so much, they don't think he's going to get there. He's not. So we stick with the guy who's given us the business, who's the mayor at the moment. I think it's a really good episode that shows up those kind of contradictions that really in law, for example, there really isn't anything such as morals or right and wrong. It just depends on what position you're in at that at that particular time as a firm.
As I was telling you earlier, I lost all my notes and I had to watch it very quickly today. And I just wrote down a couple of things. And one of the things I wrote down was, and it was to do with Laurie, was what Paul kept telling her, that there was obligations. And it's that idea of obligations, or, what you're supposed to do, or what your role is, or what your duty might be deemed to be versus the right thing.
Yeah.
Because she took the right route. And you're right, Boston Legal do this very well. Not the only show, that's why we love the anti-hero as such. And that's why we love Alan, because he doesn't go the right way. He never goes what we would deem to be the ethical or the right way. We see that in the very first episode. And in the first episode, in order for the right thing to be done, he had to do the wrong thing. Now, we all might turn around and say that what Laurie did was the right thing. She didn't do anything wrong. But from a legal point of view, what she done legally was wrong, and did leave herself open and did leave the company open. But from an ethical point of view, it was the right thing. In a weird way, it also turned out right. Even from a legal point of view, maybe in the story, once no one finds out about it. And that is, sometimes I think a lot of people use their so-called obligation, or their, I have to do this. And it's an excuse sometimes. But on other times, and this is where the gray comes in, is like, I know it's not the right thing, but if I fucking do this, I'm in shit here. And other people could be in trouble. And I think the show does a good job of showing that, hey, look, things aren't black and white, and there are rippling repercussions. Because if you think about what she did, like, she put herself at risk of being sued, losing her fucking career, gone.
Yeah.
And everyone thinks everyone thinks they'd be the hero. Everyone thinks, when you see comments online of videos, when there's videos of people being shot or shit going down, and go, well, they should have saved, they should have did it. Fuck that shit. We don't. Some people do, right? But in that case, Laurie was a hero.
I mean, and again,
but what does Paul
she's a
do?
good character.
Yeah.
I think Paul, ultimately at the end, when she's like, I think you'll do the right thing too, where before he'd said to her, I'll put you in front of the ethics board, blah, 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 etc. if you do this, he kind of understands. And it's one of the reasons I like Paul's character.
Yeah, I think it's a great character.
He's not quite the prick that certainly Alan Shore doesn't like, or Denny Crane. He's trying to keep the firm like together. And I just think that was an interesting for Laurie. I think it was an interesting one where she was standing up to him and saying, "All right, it's up to you now." But I think the entire episode.
But hold on, can I just interrupt you there?
I think quite interesting from a truth, not truth point of view.
Do you not think there at the end when she turned around to him and said, "You'll do the right thing," but the reality is, whatever he does is the right thing, depending on how you look at it. Because if he calls her up on it to the ethics board, he's covering his ass and he's covering the company's ass. So there's repercussions of that. Now, we're talking about a company that deals with millions and stuff. So you can argue, oh, they'd be safe, but we don't. That's not the point. The point is, one road is protecting the company and the people that work there and the people that depend on that company. On the other hand, he's protecting her and what might be morally the right thing. So I thought that was how there was. I think that was the last thing that was said in that scene was, I know you'll do the right thing, but maybe there is no wrong thing. And sometimes in life, that's the way it is, that there are repercussions, both positive and negative to everything we do. I'm trying to teach my kids that look, that's just the way life is. There's no, everything you do, there's a positive and a negative, and you just got to try and figure out the best. It is a very good episode. And that's a tough fucking thing. That was a tough episode about the sperm. It was emotional one.
And this is where I think as an actress, she's really good, where she's obviously very professional and she can be very removed from, like a bit like Alan Shore, removed from what goes on around her. But obviously the guy's a friend. He's dying. He needs that. For anyone who is, well, I'm presuming you've watched it, but where they kept I think the plasma blood, right, from when their son was born. And they were going to keep it in case the son ever got sick, but he now needs it because of some terminal illness.
Yeah, he's 6 months.
But I thought it was, when I watched it again, I hadn't watched it, to be honest, probably since I first watched it. And Laurie Colson, the actress, her acting, when they're talking and she can see that the wife is hiding something, it's a brilliant scene. Like before she calls the wife out on their own, she can see that the husband can't see that she's not telling the truth, but Laurie can. I actually think it's certainly one of the top episodes of series one, but it's a really good episode anyway. Because I think, like when you're saying it doesn't really advance the characters, well, no, but when Alan Shore is talking to the woman who's the wife of the mayor, who was his crush in college, and he's just so openly honest in that first meeting in the room where the mayor, the mayor-elect, the potential mayor, is in the room. And he's like, I wanted to sleep with you every day in college and blah, 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 blah. And it's a great moment of that's just honest pouring out of Alan Shore and kind of what he does.
No, hold on. I think you're giving him a bit too much credit there. I think there's other, no, that's him acting the mick. I think later on you get to see when it's something similar to what you and I were speaking to before, earlier today, is that when you see him one-on-one, when you see Alan with his one-on-ones, is where you see usually the totally as honest as he can be. And I think you see that with Samantha after she turns up after being she was in the rain or something or whatever, and they're down having a drink, which I think is the place where he broke up with Sally. But that one-on-one moment is him being honest. Whereas I'm sorry, but I think when he's back with the husband, that's him being the mischievous fucker that we love. Yes, he's telling the truth, but he's doing it in a mischievous way.
He's doing it to piss off
the
guy who might be mayor. But that later scene where the wife realizes he's screwing the media consultant, whoever she is, on his campaign.
Great scene.
When she's like, "Oh, you were joking when you said that." This is why I love James Spader's acting. I say this as a 42-year-old male, so I may be wrong, but when he starts to talk and say, "Listen, there was no joke about that," and he talks, his eyes don't leave hers, and I thought it was like she thought it was a joke. He's like, "No, I was deadly serious," and it's one of the things I love about James Spader. But it's that kind of what do you call it?
He's brilliant.
Yeah, the way he does it in The Blacklist as well. But that kind of, when you watch him in that scene, and Dana Delaney is a great actress, and she's also obviously very beautiful. And he eats up that scene, not in a selfish way, but it just lets you know how much he was fucking serious about how much he was into her when they were in college. I think it's one of the great early scenes in Boston Legal, which, by the way, I also say one of the great early ones is when in this episode, when Denny Crane is going for that test on his brain. I think that's brilliantly done as well.
Just go back to Spader for a second. He is very good at that, and I think he's with this character. He does it brilliantly, where you get to see just little, sort of like you see little bits of him behind the curtain. You know, the Alan Shore, obviously the public Alan Shore, and then you have the private Alan Shore. So we get to see these little moments behind, as I said, behind the curtain. One of the other moments I really liked, and he does this in a few episodes. Sorry, there's the bit before he goes in and speaks to the husband. I think it's when she's sitting there on the couch, and he just comes in and he puts her arms on, he puts his hands on her shoulders, and when he does it, it's like the most caring, loving thing that I can think of on television. When he does it, he's that good at it. And like you said, when he's like that moment with her, and he's just staring at the camera, and it's like he's just amazing at just block it, as if nothing else exists apart from this moment of honesty. And he does it very well in The Blacklist, obviously, as well. Look, he's a great actor. We know this.
And I don't know how other actors, what they're working with him, feel about it, but he has a tendency to take up the entire scene with himself, how he talks, how he holds himself. And I think that's why I love him, how he does it. And I just think, like, in there's a couple of those scenes early on, and particularly that scene with the mayor's wife, when they're where she comes to his hotel room, she's like, he's screwing her, I found the phone, and they go for a drink. But also, it kind of shows, I don't know whether it was her reluctance or his, that it seems like they don't sleep together in the episode.
No, they don't.
And I kind of think, again, he can be a dirty bastard, and people would look at the show now and, but I actually think there was something about him where he's like, he didn't want it that way. I don't think it was that she turned him down, but I feel like it was like he didn't want it the way it happened, but he wanted the mayor to think that this might just be the way that it happens.
I don't know. I don't know. I think we see with Alan that, deep down, not even deep down, he is a romantic in some ways, but obviously he's dealing with his demons and everything else, as we all are. And I just wonder, because don't forget, he's with Tara at the moment, and obviously Tara, who he ends up in the last scene in that motel. And and as you said, with Samantha being with him, probably, but he didn't do it. And I just think sometimes with Alan, there is that line where he is a gentleman and where he doesn't cross it. And I also think he realizes that also Samantha is from the past, and that idea that he has of her, it's not now, and let it stay there. It's nicer in the past, and
well, I think you're right. I think when you look at kind of the episode or two before where he's talking to, what's her name again, Hannah?
Sally.
I apologize.
Or in the last episode, or Samantha.
No, not Sally.
Oh, Samantha in this episode. Yeah, Samantha.
No, the English girl.
Tara.
The English lawyer. Tara, right? So where there's a couple of episodes, certainly the last one or two, where she's talking about, like, what are they? What are we doing here? And I think that's part of it. You're right, that in this episode, he kind of thinks, well, this is something I yearned for so long in my past, and actually I've got somebody in my present. Yeah. And I think that's probably part. And again, we don't know. Maybe behind the scenes when they were writing this, the mayor's wife, or soon to be ex-wife, rejects him. We don't know, but it seems he chooses the woman he's with right now over that kind of situation, but happy in the knowledge that, I mean, the conversation he has with the guy, the mayor-elect, about the divorce papers is brilliant. Where he's like, so she'll have a hand in every decision that you make, in every pick. I couldn't do that. Okay. And then it's like, 60, 70% of everything. And I love that line. And like 65% of bank accounts or whatever is as of yesterday, as of close of business. In other words, you're not going to fuck about on this shit. and it kind of shows him for the great
And you're
lawyer.
gonna pay for the forensic accountants that we're going to fucking hire. That's the bit I loved. I was dealing today with a few solicitors and stuff to do with property and stuff, and to have to pay for the other side's dog that's gonna come in and rip you apart. I like that. I like that bit. That was the bit that stood out for me. I was like, you have to pay because people pay me to go through shit, and you don't want me going through your shit. Don't want these guys going through your shit, but to make you pay for it. Fucking bastard. But yeah, no, it's I lost my train of thought there again, not for the first time. What are we talking about? Man, I need sleep. Possibly.
Actually, I know. I think.
Okay, no, sorry, no. I know what it was. I had a thought. Here's the thought, just as you were talking about Tara. So when he was talking about Samantha in the motel with the flashing flamingo pink lights, he was talking about that would be their first time. And I've had a thought that maybe because you were talking about him, Alan and Tara in the last couple of episodes, that there were kind of obviously a lot of flirting going on and a bit of a game going on. And I'm wondering whether that was their first time. So in the last couple of episodes where they're indicating that they're together, they hadn't actually slept together. I think that might have been the case because I don't have the script. I usually have the script in front of me. I don't have it, but he said something about should have done this before or something like that, I think. And I think maybe because that was the other thing with himself. He was talking about Samantha to Tara that it was just bad timing and lost opportunity was had. And it was like, I'm not going to let the opportunity pass. No matter what happens, I'm not letting this opportunity pass this time with Tara. So it shows a bit of growth there in Alan.
Yeah, but so moving from that to, I guess it was a minor player in the episode for once was Denny Crane. And obviously it started off where he was having the cognitive test with the specialist. And he started off kind of taking the piss with the specialist. And then when he thought the specialist was thinking, hang on, this guy's not, he kind of then, talks, who's the president? He talks about, it's a great line where he talks, because at the time, George W. Bush is the president. George, Herbert Walker Bush was his father, and Prescott Bush, who wrestled naked with my father in college. And it's funny, but you can tell he's obviously very worried. And when Paul has the conversation with him, that he's the main rainmaker, and he hasn't made rain and brought big business in a few years. You're kind of wondering where this episode's going to go. But it's one of the reasons I love Denny Crane, because they kind of flaunt the fact that he's a bit now scatter and inappropriate and everything else. But there's only a few episodes where they allow him to show just how good he can be. And although you don't see it in court in this episode, when he takes on your man's case, who clearly stuck a fork in a fucking toaster, and that's why he got hurt. I love that he manages to make it into a potential class action suit and kind of keeps the wolves. Denny Crane keeps the wolves from the door in terms of the board who might want to get rid of him. And those kind of episodes I love with Denny Crane, where you can tell he so desperately still wants to be, as we all would be, right? That sharp lawyer, that guy everyone fears, he never loses, etc., etc., etc. And he pulls it out of the bag at the end of the episode, even if it might seem a bit far-fetched, which in that episode, it probably does seem a bit far-fetched when the guy admitted like it was his fault, etc., etc. But I think it's an interesting second story for what's to come over the seasons for like Denny Crane. I don't know what you think on that.
Well, I think where it continues, like if people want to go back and watch our first podcast and we talked about the first episode, like the Denny story, a lot of it is about relevance as we get older, because as we get older, in a lot of ways, we can't do what we used to do, but we still have bits of us.
Yeah.
I think what the Denny character shows is that we might lose some of it, but there's still some of it still left in there. And there is a beautiful line in it when he's talking about Alzheimer's, where they, the blue, white, and blue, red, and white in his brain. He doesn't know what's what in that, but he says sometimes he remembers stuff, sometimes he forgets stuff. And it's like, I mean, and that's the same for all of us. What the continuation of Denny's story in relation to Alzheimer's, we see it's not that simple. But in another way, it kind of is. What we see here again is that we get, as you said, we get a glimpse. We get a little bit of a glimpse of what Denny Crane, when he says Denny Crane, because I love when he says Denny Crane, it's my ringtone now. And when Denny says his name, we get a glimpse of what that used to mean. Now, you might think what he did was far-fetched. I can tell you it's not.
Yeah.
I don't work in the legal system like that. But the shit I've seen, yeah. I mean, listen, it's not that far-fetched. But it does show that when Denny was put up to it, and again, he was put up to it like he was in one of the earlier episodes, and will continue to be through the majority of the series. When the gun is put to his head nearly, that he's able to pull that rabbit out of the hat, and he's in total control. I mean, look, I think Shatner's an underrated actor, right? He's not a Marlon Brando, but I still think he's a damn fine actor, and I think he plays that really well between someone in control, someone that's scared and losing control, and then not in control.
You're right. And there is an element of how much is he taking the piss out of people who think he's kind of losing his marbles, right?
Yeah.
That he's cognitively declined. There's one line in this episode, and it never gets repeated, but when I watched the first time, I felt the same way, and it really annoyed me because it felt, maybe it's because it's early on, but it felt unnecessarily mean. And it's when Paul says to Alan Shore, you think that Denny will defend you, right? He'll come to your rescue. And Alan Shore says, yeah, if he can remember who I am. And I just thought that was unnecessarily, you don't ever see that again with the two of them. They're in lockstep. And maybe it was just the way it was written. I thought it was unnecessarily harsh from Alan Shore in terms of the comment. Like, in other words, I know he's fucked in the head. So that kind of thing. Anyway, but that was just, I took that the first time I watched this. I thought, okay, so they're not that close. And then obviously, as the show goes on, you realize they are. And the second time, because I know, how the show goes, I thought, wow, unnecessarily harsh from Alan Shore. Because the one thing about Denny Crane is, as fucking mad as he can be, and as much as he'll tell you, if I can sleep with your wife and she's hot, I'll sleep with your wife. And he's but he, in his own weird way, he is fiercely loyal. Like, fiercely loyal. In his own, and I know it sounds strange, in his own way. Not when it comes to women, I guess, but he's fiercely loyal. And I just thought with Alan Shore, who's becoming closer to him, I just thought that was an odd remark to make to Paul.
I would agree, not unnecessarily harsh, but I do think it's a line that didn't need to be in there. There was no need for it. I think it could have been written better in relation to showing the animosity between Alan and Paul that is obviously there and is lingering on, especially from the last couple of episodes. It's been growing. Yeah. I would give Alan, as I would most people, the benefit of the doubt that actually when he said that, it had nothing to do with Denny and it had all to do with Paul. And all to do with, I suppose, because Paul is threatening him with his job, as he does in nearly every episode. So I don't know, unnecessarily harsh, maybe not, but unnecessary. Yeah, it could have been written. That bit could have been written better.
Yeah, we'll come to it in later episodes, but there is a very clearly Paul and Denny were close at one point.
Yeah,
and he still has great affection for Denny, but he is obviously he's the lawyers, he's the rules guy, making sure everyone does the right thing. And that seems to him to be more important than, and we'll talk about that as the show goes on.
Well, he's the father figure.
There's definitely, I love Paul.
Is the father.
Is a great.
That's who he is. He's the
central character to all the mad stuff that goes on, but the one that they all go to, and when there's a problem. But I just think, and again, it goes back to why we're doing the podcast on this show. I just think the different style of characters, and I know there's certain things in the show that wouldn't get made now, or people would be pissed off about, or whatever. But I just think as an ensemble cast, it really brings out all sides of people's personality, and I think I just think it's like, I think this is I keep saying this on it, but it's a really good early example of the different situations that the characters get into. So it's not that one where you have a character who, for, there's 8 seasons, and for 5 seasons they're hard as a rock, they won't break the rules, and then we've run out of stories, so they do. It's one of those shows where even the characters that are, you can't break the rules, this is how it, and that's it, when they're in that situation themselves, they find it difficult, which you and I have talked about before, right? People giving you advice, and they're always whiter than white, and how it should be, and they're morally correct because no one ever does anything wrong. And you take that advice, and then we're in a similar or same situation themselves. There's every excuse or every reason as to why they did it differently to how they told you to do it. And that's the human condition. That's how it is. At least with Alan Shore as a character, and I don't know, I think probably maybe James Spader as a person when I've seen him interviewed, Alan Shore draws his own lines for morality and what's right or wrong, because he understands that the industry he's in, the job that he does, he sometimes has to defend people that you wouldn't want to defend in life. But it's important to do that for the overall sake of the process. I don't know if Denny Crane feels that same way, but I think what Alan Shore, if anyone has watched, by the way, the practice episodes with Alan Shore, and particularly, and I know Denny Crane's in some of them, there is an element of what he's prepared to do for his client, but you do kind of feel that he, in his own head, says to himself that that's okay, that's the process, and that's how it works.
Do you think, because you were saying that, and I was just thinking that actually when you're saying Alan does that within the scope of what his job is, do we not all do that as well? That we all cross that line and defend, or well, their family, and this is what you have to do for family, or their friend, this is what you do for, or whatever. There's an excuse for crossing that line, doing something for someone else that you may or you shouldn't do, but you do it because whatever the circumstances are, that it's either family or with Alan, it's in a job. And I think that's one of the great things about this show, and that's why it's so relatable. That these are rich people, the 1%, you could nearly say. But they're still relatable because we can see our own decisions that sometimes we have to make in there, and that sometimes we have to cross that line, and we don't draw that line.
I would just say, though,
I don't know, maybe
I would just say that the difference I found, you're right to an extent, but the difference that I found in real life is that people don't, I'm sure I've done it myself, people don't acknowledge when they are, for example, moving past a red line. When you've asked for advice, they're like, well, this is what you should and shouldn't do. This is the red line. That when they're moving past that or doing what they wouldn't have advised, they don't allow themselves to think that actually I'm doing this because, you know what, now that I'm experiencing that situation, it's a lot harder than I thought it was when I was giving advice on that situation. Whereas what I like about Alan Shore is he's like, and again, this can be an excuse for people to, I'm kind of an asshole and I understand how the world works. So there are certain things like early episodes with Sally Heap. You need to get away from me. And she's like, oh, you just want me to want you more. And it's like, no, you're too nice for who I am. And this is who I am. And I will do these horrible things again because that's my career and who I am as a person when it comes to my job. And I think in real life, I mean, I know myself when I've done not terrible things, but when I've done something where I've probably gone beyond the line where I've advised someone else, don't go beyond that line. If it's cheating or if it's something in your job or whatever, and I've gone beyond that line. I mean, I've tried to justify it to myself. Oh, well, this is the reason why I did that. And everyone does it. But I like about what I like about, I said about Alan Shore is he's well aware of that line that he's going over and the reasons why he's doing it, which in my mind makes him a better person, even if other people don't think so.
Well, but that's the thing I was just thinking about a lot of the characters, and they're so well written that their actions sometimes we may go, oh, we wouldn't do that, but actually there's a lot of honesty in David Kelly's writing, and the same in his other shows, that, as you said, they do acknowledge a lot of what they do themselves as maybe not openly as wrong, but the show acknowledges, or they acknowledge it in some way. But in life, we don't do that. So the weird thing is, no matter what you think of Alan and Denny, especially, they are, I don't know if it's ironically is the right word, but they're pretty honest about who they are. And I wonder if the show was made today, it obviously wouldn't be made the same. I think they'd screw it up in an effort to make it. But I don't think it would be as honest. I think there will be certain aspects will be taken out of it, and other aspects will be heightened, and therefore it would be nowhere near as good as. That's the feeling I get with a lot of shows. They're preachy, and what this show is great, and what I think Kelly is great at, is showing that kind of, as I said, that honesty in characters, whether it's a short-term character or a long-term, because obviously we see that with Laurie at the moment. She's still continuing on this, on her arc is continuing, but we know she doesn't. She goes soon enough. Sally's the same, and obviously Tara's the same, because there's changes in season 2.
Well, don't tell people that who are only watching it. I think everyone.
Yeah, I think it's 2004. If they haven't seen it by now.
Well, I do think I was going to ask you actually. I do think that when it came to the plasma blood storyline, I do actually think that if it was Shirley Schmidt she was talking to, I think Shirley Schmidt would have taken the much harder line and said, like, this guy is dying. You either tell him the truth, or you're going to lose your job.
Well, if you remember what Laurie said to Alan in the episode where he's dealing with his ex that tried to kill him, and Laurie was telling him, listen, you have to do the best and do the best for your client, and you got to do it, and you got to do whatever it takes, no emotion or anything like that. Now, obviously, that was a couple of episodes ago, a few episodes ago, and Laurie is changing, obviously, her arc, and that's what we're seeing with her. With Shirley, I agree. I think Shirley Schmidt would not have been as nice as Paul. Well, the Shirley Schmidt that we're going to see soon, not the Shirley Schmidt at the end.
I think from the 8th or 9th episode she comes in.
Looking forward to that.
No, I think it doesn't matter. But like closing off on the episode, I think it was really good, very engaging. Like you said, without being one that massively furthers any of the characters' development, which means that the stories in themselves I thought were brilliant. I thought when again, if we haven't talked about it before, when Laurie found out that the wife was lying and actually someone else fathered the child, which is why the wife wouldn't let the blood go. I thought that was really brilliantly done.
Isn't that because it's truth be told, and we all talk, you and I, but like in general, we all talk about having to tell the truth and stuff. But it's weird in that I'll have to go back and check the script, but I don't think at any time does the ex-wife lie. She doesn't lie about anything, not to the husband. And she tells the truth. It's just of what she says. She just doesn't tell all the truth. And I think...
But I think that's like what we talked about earlier, right? It's that interesting thing of where is it truth, where is it lies,
and disclosure.
Like, and again, also in the legal profession, like, you know, when Sally Heap is talking to the guy who's sticking the fork in the fucking toaster and he wants compensation, when he starts being honest, like, that's probably my fault, she's like, just answer the question honestly. And I think that's a really interesting start for that episode, because the wife, like you said, she doesn't lie. She just only volunteers an answer to the question. And that's kind of, I think, how that episode, and again, the wife of the mayor, when she finds out that he's, shagging the whoever you want, the aide or the medic and whoever you wanted that's right by their side, and she's there when he wins, gives the hug. So she's not lying about anything. She's just not giving the full truth of what's happened. And then once he gets elected,
to go back to Alan's thing,
so
I mixed up truth with total disclosure. And I tell people when you're making a claim, don't tell them everything, just whatever they ask. Or if I'm telling people when they're going up in front of a judge, you and because what Sally said to Toaster Boy wasn't wrong. This is because I tell people this: when you get up, you answer the question and use the least amount of words possible. Now,
but even in my job, you're penalized for lying. But if you're dealing with some kind of regulator, for example, and they ask a question, you're told just answer the question. Don't offer up all kinds of. But it's not about not telling the truth. It's like you're opening doors that don't need to be opened, and then we have 6 months. Just answer their fucking question that they've asked. And so there's a certain thing to that I think it works. I would just say this, and I'll finish on this. I know we're coming to the end here. I will finish on this. I liked the end, towards the end with Denny Crane, where initially he'd gone for the cognitive test. Paul came to talk to him, and he's having like late breakfast in his office.
Steak.
Clearly not doing any work.
Yeah.
And, he's talking about, Paul, you're going for a cognitive test, blah, and Paul's like, no. And then at the end, when he's done it, and he comes back in, and he's also realized that actually I need to bring money in. So the toaster story kind of concludes with him having, obviously behind the scenes, gone to the company and said, this could be a class action suit, or you take our company for all your business, which could be whatever, millions a year, and I'm not available to do this. Oh, and by the way, give that kid 50 grand for what happened. And I love that bit with him and Paul at the end, where he's like, Paul, do you remember when we talked? And he's like, no. He goes, Jesus, Paul, you really should go for that test. It's a beautiful, because they both know, and this is where I think William Shatner is such a great actor. They both know that Denny Crane is in decline. They don't know how quick or how far. So those little victories for Denny Crane are huge to him, because he never wants to retire, right? He wants to die in that chair, die as a lawyer. That's his thing.
Yeah, he says that if you go back to the very first episode, the first episode, and then there's another one of I think it could be 2 episodes ago where your man pulls a gun on him as well. It's like, because that's how he wants to go. Denny Crane. Yeah.
And he proves throughout the series, he's no coward, which I like about him. He's not put down as some stereotypical right winger, and we won't get into where sometimes he really isn't one. But that's why you couldn't make that show now. Somebody who's a dyed-in-the-wool lawyer who's a left winger and a dyed-in-the-wool Republican, and it works. There's only a few times in the series where they have a massive falling out. Anyway, I would just say this. It's one of the best episodes, I think, of the first series for sure. What do you think, Henry?
Yeah, it's a good episode. I don't know if it's the best. That's the thing. They're all great. I'm biased on that I think they're all great, and there's so much in every episode, and there is a lot going on there. The questions that are asked is about when is the right thing? What is the right thing? Where's that line? As is everything. Where does the truth belong? And I still like the wife not telling the ex-husband. She could have very easily just told him the truth, knowing that he was probably going to be dead in 6 months. Fuck him, but didn't.
You can see why, right?
Well,
I mean, look, he may have 6 months to live, and to find out then that the child that he thought was his, that was it, as he talks about it, throwing your DNA forward into the future, and then to find out that actually, I slept with this guy once or twice or whatever, and it's not your kid when he's already dying. I can kind of understand where she was coming from on that, which is obviously why Laurie Colson lied to him in the end.
Yeah, but I think that's something that I'm probably only realizing even more so now is that.
See, I would have been a halfway caravan. I would have said to the husband, you can't get the blood, and I can't tell you why. Talk to your wife. That probably would have been my. Because I mean, how do you?
Well, that's come here. That's what most of us.
Obviously, it's a TV show, hoping that in the end, like whether he dies or not, he doesn't go further onto court. He doesn't throw everything at it because his life is at risk. But in the context of the show, I thought it was an odd decision that she made. I would have, in the context of the show, I would think that she should have told him the truth, so he doesn't waste any more money on his life and spend it all on health.
No, but
right, don't waste
but
that.
She
more
found
money.
the solution to both of that, except obviously she might get into trouble. But in that he's not going to follow it up because he thinks it's gone now, and I'm sure she goes off and she tells the ex-wife, and whatever happens between the two of them and the son, whatever happens, and that's what I like about this show. It's just off, you know, we can talk about that and make up our minds on whatever we think is going to happen. I think what Kelly's very good at, and what shows like this are very good at, is kind of showing that, hey, there's another way of dealing with things. There's a more honorable way. So even though, as we were saying before, that people might think that Alan and Denny are sexist, crude, whatever the way you want to put it, at the end of the day, there is moments of honesty and there's moments of honor. And there are moments, and I think what we're seeing, what Laurie does here is shows that, hey, look, that actually there is a right way there's a better way of doing things. And I wonder if that show was made today, and you see what's going on and you see the kind of way people are acting and saying that women especially should act, whether the wife, it would have been written for the wife to be as compassionate as she was and as loving and because the wife just wasn't thinking of herself there, because she could have got back, because she made comments about the lawyers before when they met in the diner. So the divorce was not an amicable, happy divorce. And yet she still didn't. She could have thrown him under the bus for her own personal, whatever way you want to put it. And I know men who are going through that at the moment. They just pick the wrong women. And it seems to be happening a lot more.
Yeah.
And it seems to be celebrated by a lot of corners. I'm sorry to say this, but on social media, especially, what the wife did, if the wife had been a complete bitch and told him the truth and threw him under the train in a ha-ha kind of way, there's a lot of people that would have celebrated that. What Boston Legal does, and not the only show, what it does is it shows up, hey, that look, we can be better. And it's shown up that, yeah, things are not black and white. There's a lot of gray, but there's better ways of dealing with it. And I think Laurie played very well by Monica Potter. Laurie's one of those characters that, and as is Alan and Denny and Paul especially, show themselves up to be, hey, there's goodness. There's a better way. You don't have to be a dick about it. You don't have to be, because it's weird. At the end of the day, the people in the company, they might come across sometimes as narcissistic, but they're not actually selfish, narcissistic people. Sometimes their customers, their clients are they're up against. But I don't think, would you say that Denny is narcissistic? There's times he acts like a selfish asshole, as we all do. But I think what this show and other shows, good shows, can show is that, hey, look, we're all messed up and we all make mistakes and we all get it wrong. But hey, we can still, with a bit of compassion and a bit of thought and understanding, hey, there is a better way of doing it. That's just what I thought a few minutes ago about that I didn't think about before, about the ex-wife in relation to the son's DNA or the cord, and they do, and it's great. And that would be what I would say. You know,
I think, and for episodes coming up, we can talk about why early on in the show, certainly at least, Alan Shore lives in a hotel, a nice hotel, but he lives in a hotel.
Well, we see that in the.
But that's for another evening.
Okay, I think we're going to finish. That's it. To be honest, I'm a bit tired. Thank you, everybody, for listening, for your time. Please get in contact, like, share, do that thing. Email address is there. Please send me an email if there's anything you want us to talk about. We will be back next week. We'll be back next week. Either one for the road or we'll do the next episode. So keep watching. We're on Facebook, Twitter, the usual stuff. Yep. So thank you, everybody.
Guys, and we will see you for episode 7.
Beautiful. See you then. And stay safe.